All right, what's up, everyone? This video here is extremely random, but it's something that I wanted to speak on just because some of the things that I've heard and said over the past few months. Boxing is picking up, and we're getting some good fights, right? We're getting some good fights, but when we look at the welterweight division, the lightweight division, the heavyweight division, a lot of fights are not being made, and the belts are always involved. The sanctioning bodies is always involved. I made a video last night basically discussing, Deontay Wilder's retirement, right? Discuss how, I don't care about his losses, Joshua's losses. I still always wanted to see them fight. No matter what happened in their careers, always just wanted to see them fight. Spoke on them. Fury is a WBC champ. I spoke briefly on Dillian White, how Dillian White has been a mandatory for so long and still hasn't gotten his title opportunity, right? So I brought him up. And, right now, we don't know what Fury is going to do because Dillian White is officially his mandatory now, right? And we know Joshua is going into a rematch against Alexander Usyk, who just recently beat him. But if you go around, think of Canelo. Canelo just recently won Undisputed. But Canelo has been stripped in the past. He was stripped at 160. There was a time where, he had an issue with the WBC because they stripped him. And I believe they gave the belt to Gennady Golovkin. When you look at the lightweight division, you got that situation down there with the Undisputed thing, the franchise title, Is George Kambosos officially undisputed? Was Teal officially undisputed? You have that situation going on. You have Tank Davis, who's just a regular WBA champ. Recently, they asked him when he was in a car, like, yo, would you fight George Kambosos? He's like, yeah, I might fight him. He said something on the lines of, yeah, I might fight him, but he could keep them belts. I don't even want those. There's a WBA situation right now with Yordenis Ugas, who, Spence was trying to fight. I mean, he is a PBC fighter, so they've definitely always been trying to keep things in-house. But now, Ugas is being forced to fight two of his mandatories back-to-back. So whoever wins his fight against Stanionis, they have to fight Butayev. So Stanionis is already the mandatory. But even after that fight, he has to fight another mandatory, or he's going to get stripped. So there's going to be no unification between Errol Spence or Terrence Bud Crawford for that WBA title, at least. So I'm throwing all these examples around to say this. Enough, as much as I want an undisputed champ, as much as I want these guys to make history, all right? I want these guys to make history. I want them to go down in the record books of having undisputed and unified champs. It's good when you put all your your records and your accolades and all your accomplishments together at the end of your career or during your career and say, look, you was undisputed this amount of times, you was unified this amount of times, you won titles in this amount of divisions. All of that is great. All of that is great. Of course, I would want that because historically it means something. Because now when you dig into the past, we get to see what this fighter actually accomplished, all right? As far as their career titles that were awarded, stuff like that. It's always great. But at the end of the day, there's nothing more meaningful to me, and I'm speaking solely for me right now. There's nothing more meaningful to me than giving us the fight we want, as in fighting the best fighting the best. There's nothing more powerful than that. There's nothing more powerful. You know why people respect gatekeepers like a Derek Chisora or Gabe Rosado? Like, I like to bring those two up. Yes, they have a lot of losses, but why do they keep headlining fights? Gabe Rosado headlined in Brooklyn before. All right? We don't need to count how many times Derek Chisora headlined a fight. He was the main event on a fight card. You know what I'm saying? Because people still want to see them. You know, because they're not afraid to fight anybody. And I understand part of the reason why they keep getting fights is because people feel that they're respectable, tough fights, but they're winnable fights. So I understand why the top fighters still want to give those guys opportunities. You know, not, you know, of course they got a name. Of course they're tough, they're good, they're respectable, but they're winnable fights. So I understand that. But at the same time, we really don't need the belts. And if these fighters just said, you know what? I'm going to fight. Let's just say Tank was really about what he's saying. I don't know if he is. He may be. Because I've heard him say, you know, I heard Floyd say before that, you know, complain about the sanctioning fees. Over the years, he's complained about the sanctioning fees. Not many fighters do it. But those sanctioning fees, people don't want to be bothered with having so many belts. You know? Now I know Tank has held titles, the 3 WBA titles in 3 different divisions, but they always were like the regular title, except the one at 130, right? I think that was the super title. But 135 and at 140, he held the regular title, right? Which is like the babier version. It's not the full version, right? Josh Taylor holds it, one at 140. And George Kambosos is currently holding the one at 135. At the end of the day, these fighters don't need the sanctioned bodies, especially the much more accomplished fighters. You know, I said yesterday, excuse my breathing because I'm very congested right now, but I said the other day, or I said yesterday, I still want to see AJ and Wilder fight. And it really doesn't take much to make that fight happen. We just need an agreement and a signed contract, and they can make the fight without having to deal with the titles at all. Let's just say they were to, you know what, forget about Usyk, let Fury go and do his thing. All right? Let's just say Fury and Usyk were to fight undisputed. And Joshua and Wilder decided to fight each other. Which will be the bigger fight? Joshua and Wilder will probably be a bigger fight. You know why? Because there's a long, ongoing bad blood between the two. They're both bigger stars. People were demanding this fight, but there was a point where the two of them held all of the titles simultaneously. The two of them. That would still be a big fight. If that fight were to happen in 2022, it will still be the biggest fight in heavyweight division. Easily. You know? Now, Fury says, another example, Fury says, you know what? I'm not going to fight Dillian White. Which would kind of suck, because I do want White to get his opportunity, right? But if he says, you know what? I'm not going to fight Dillian White. I want to fight Usyk now. I'm going to fight Usyk right now. Let's say AJ steps aside, or if AJ didn't take the rematch. If there's a situation where the belt was holding him back from fighting Usyk, am I going to have a problem with him not fighting Dillian White to go on to fight Usyk? Absolutely not. If Fury said, you know what? I'm not going to fight White. I'm not going to fight Usyk. I'm going to go straight to an AJ fight. I want to fight him. Am I going to really have a problem with that? Of course, all of these scenarios, there's going to be an issue when it comes to the titles. But I'm giving you these scenarios because I'm just letting you know that if you go down in history fighting the best and winning, if not all, but the majority of those fights, people are still going to respect you. You might not have unified, or you might not have undisputed, okay? You might not have undisputed officially on your resume, but people are going to know who's the best. Same thing with Crawford and Spence. It doesn't have to be undisputed. Everybody recognized Crawford and Spence as the two best welterweights. You don't need to fight Ugas to determine that. You can leave that belt sitting right there. The belts, there's no bigger belt to me. It's all about the man. It's all about the fighter. It has nothing to do with the actual belt. It's all about determining who is the best. It has nothing to do with, well, this guy has all of the titles. Yes, it's cool. You might have all of the titles. George Kambosos wasn't viewed as the best in the division or the most threatening person in the division until he beat Teofimo Lopez. Once he won that fight, and once I actually saw how he fought, now I have to wonder, how good is he? I don't know how he fares against Devin Haney or Tank or Ryan. I don't know now. Now, if you asked me before that fight, I probably would have predicted those guys to beat him. Now I'm not so sure. Even if I do predict those guys to still beat him, I'm not so sure. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many titles you hold. It doesn't tell the full story if you're not fighting the best. That's a problem with the 135 division. I really don't know who's the best. It's hard to really prove. It's hard to really tell. Everybody's making, comparisons or who is doing what and how they looked against certain. No. We basing everything too much on the belts. So when Tank said that the other day about Kambosos, I don't even want those. He can keep those belts. Maybe I'll take the fight. Now, he probably really didn't mean what he said, but if he did mean what he said, that would be great. If he really did mean that, like when Lara fought Canelo didn't even want the title. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I think Lara had like the super title at the time, and Canelo just didn't care for the title. He didn't even want the title at all. He just wanted to fight Lara. He was so angry that Lara pressed him at his press conference that he just wanted to fight. And I like that. I don't think every fighter can do it. But these fighters that I'm naming, I think they're big enough to a point where they could really just make a stand. Like, not for nothing, but you guys' names, Tank, Tyson Fury, Joshua, Wilder, Spence, Crawford, Canelo. All of these guys have names big enough to say, yo, I'm fighting who I want to fight. I don't need to be sanctioned by you. I don't need to be the champ. Now, we all may not agree that Tank is a big dog or not, but him saying he's a big dog, he feels like he's a big dog, right? And many people agree with him because everybody wants to fight him. When it comes to Lomachenko, George, Haney, Ryan, everybody wants a piece of Tank Davis, right? They want a piece of him. He might be the big dog. Do I think he's the most proven? I don't think so. But his name is big enough to where people will take the fight in a heartbeat. And if he were to just say, you know what? I don't care about the belts. Just make the fight happen. If this, I only want to fight the best guys at 135. Historically, he might not have those unification matches if he were to do that, but people will respect him because, yo, Tank got wins over Loma, Haney, Ryan Garcia, George Cambosos, Teofimo Lopez, or whoever else is there. People will respect it more. Now, I know a lot of business goes involved with it. I know certain fights need to be sanctioned, especially for the fighters, the opponents that are ranked. So certain fighters are ranked. But if you're getting offered a certain amount or an opportunity to fight a certain star, what's going to stop you? Even if you lose your ranking, all right? You're still going to get that opportunity to fight other big fighters in the division. I don't know. I made this video because I just don't want everything to be about the sanctioning bodies. I mean, it's bad enough we got to deal with the networks and the promoters. All right? And when there's promoters that have beef with each other, I think it could definitely disrupt certain fights from happening. Right? You know, I've always said, like, people complain about the PBC, and I do too at times, but you got to remember, when it came especially to the welterweight division, Top Rank was the first PBC. They kept everything very in-house. When Sean, when Thurman, when those guys were on the come up, even when Spence started coming around, those guys kept everything in-house. They did. And, you know, people try to forget that was happening, but there was a time where the Top Rank had the majority of the top welterweights. And those guys kept it in-house, you know, and their fighters were cool with keeping it in-house. So we already have promoter issues. But these sanctioning bodies seem to really, but it's mandatory. He got to fight his mandatory. He got to fight his mandatory. Some of these fighters are so big that what if they just said, you know what? Nah, I'm not going to fight that guy. I'm not going to fight my mandatory. Now, it sucks when you don't fight your mandatory and you go off to fight someone that most of us view to be a cherry pick or an easier fight. I mean, if that's your business, that's what you want to do. But what if a situation comes like a Tyson Fury situation? He says, you know what? I'm going to duck Dillian White to fight AJ or to fight Usyk without having to fight Dillian White first. Is that really a cherry pick? I don't know. Makes for a good conversation. Leave the comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think about that. Do we really need the sanctioning bodies? And could there be a point where the fighters just say, I don't want those belts? How would that make you feel? Would that ruin their history, I guess? You know? Would it ruin their legacy if they were to not fight for the belts, but just go and target the best fighters in the division without having their fight sanctioned? How would that work out? How would that play out? All right? And how would it affect their legacy if that were to happen more? There's been plenty of times where boxers didn't want to deal with the sanctioning body. All right. So let me know what you guys think on that. Make sure you guys leave comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.